So she enters, she's on a Dover beach and about to have a photo shoot. She's Home Secretary at present, but she's got her eyes on the top job of being Prime Minister. So everything's kind of aimed to really put her in the best light. The whole aim of that Dover photo shoot is we're also going to announce a new initiative that we've come up with, and we're going to have an interview with a journalist on a train. Enter Anna.
I am the journalist on the train. I work for the Times, and we meet Tobi when she's literally just met the Home Secretary, and they're not expecting her because they're expecting a man called Scott that was originally supposed to be doing the interview. I, very last minute, have came in to replace Scott because Scott has been sacked. So, yeah, they're very much like, who are you? And I'm like, I normally do the makeup column, but today I'm here to talk about politics.
It's weird because you kind of find out you have the job, but you don't know who's in the cast before you get to the rehearsal room. So it's kind of very private time, and you taking your personal thoughts and like it's very personal way of thinking. Like, oh, how is this character? But it could completely change when you get into the room and you realise what the themes and the genre we're creating as a cast, because you create it as a world.
You're playing against your role within
within the company.
Your characters.
So I think it's like being really reactive is quite an important part of being into the room. So as much work you might want to do on your character beforehand, it's more sort of research, generalised research of like into the world of politics, I suppose, for this play. You definitely needed to watch a good few videos of politicians and just like, I was kind of listening to podcasts about the current climate and the current Home Secretary. And then when I got into the room, it was like, oh, wonderful. So like Debbie's vision also curated that was kind of like really loud and just fun, which I might not have been.
A drama school teacher once said to me, Ali D'Souza at RCS, he was like, acting, what we teach you at RCS is it's not about putting on the coats, it's about taking off the layers. So I always think, if I was in this situation, I was a journalist, I was at the Times, I got put on last minute to an interview that I really wanted, and then I had to say these lines, how would I say it? So that's the angle I go from.
It's quite wonderful to see how everyone also worked in a very different way within our cast.
Which was really so different.
Yeah, and it was really great as well because our characters are so different anyway, so their worlds are so different. So they would be working in a different way, and then how we could be really cohesive as well.
But yeah, so many different like styles in the same room. And I think that's something that Debbie found as well, because I think as a director, you need to hone in on what makes that actor, what clicks for them, but you're changing it with every single actor. And I think in our room that was really obvious because we're all so different.
Yeah, and talking about the process as well, like Debbie in the initial stages got us to do loads of improvisations. Sometimes they were kind of like solo or in your physicality, and then sometimes like we were meeting our characters in a private moment. Do you remember where yours was in your private moment?
Oh, mine's was like really low.
But you were in your flat, weren't you? And you just come back from...
I was in a flat in London, like as in I've just come in working from the Times. I'm at a job I don't really like, and had like sad music on, and was like in a box room, like having a glass of wine, like crying, I think.
Yeah.
Not that you ever see that side of Toby Tucker on stage, but it definitely helps get the depth.
And then my character was in like a hotel room, just having a little...
Practicing for a speech.
Yeah. But I think that was really useful because it kind of got us all looking into each other's world, but also it was really great to get you in your body of that character as well. And like, lots of processes were kind of like improving without the script yet, was really useful before we sort of dived into it.
And that makes you really, really know a character if you need to use your own words.
Because the piece is quite political and the current climate also kept changing. We definitely were touching base with British politicians, looking at, and also British journalists in a way. So kind of just looking at how they present themselves in when they're talking to the public and they want them on side, how they're presenting themselves when running for an election as well. It's really interesting to see those little quirks. I also kind of looked at the Home Secretary as well, just looking at her little mannerisms, which I find absolutely fascinating because she's an Asian woman who is an immigrant, who's then spouting stuff that wouldn't allow her own family, wouldn't give rights to her own family. So I thought that was like super interesting, like just delving into how she started off her career and the interviews from that period to current climate. We put it on its feet in very early stages.
Very quickly.
Which was lovely because one of my fears as an actor is you start off in rehearsals and you do text work and you're behind a table and you have that safety behind a table. It's all vocal, and then also it's stand up and you're like, I don't know what I'm doing with my body, my physicality.
And you forget how to work like your hand. You're like, do I always do my hand like this? And then you're like, how do I write?
You're just so aware of your body in a way that you, as humans, aren't. And so getting up really early like took away that fear, like because you were doing it. And I also realised we did so many runs of it.
Yeah, because it's like a marathon, isn't it? There's loads of like, obviously because it's a farce, there's loads of like opening doors, this scene, this door. And I think for everyone it was to get the pace of it, to understand what scenes needed to be and what scenes you could take more time with, where you actually need to give the audience a minute to breathe. So I think that early on, if we got to like right before tech and then ran it, it would be like, it's all wrong, we need to go back to the drawing board. So yeah, that's something I've not done in any other play.
Yeah, I've never been in a situation where I was like, oh, I actually feel comfortable knowing those little details. Usually you're like, you do your standalone scenes and you don't sew it together until like a lot later, and then all of a sudden it's all becomes about props and where you're supposed to be, which side and entrances, and it was like, we just felt really, I just felt really comfortable.
Not as scary.
Yeah, Uma actually started writing this in 2018, so the world was very different, and it's not until we're in rehearsals where everything you couldn't make it up, like like it was almost like people said like a documentary was happening when we were in rehearsals, and we were like, and I think as like the script didn't change, but actually sometimes with current events that have happened as well, it's like the way that we play it might need to be more sensitive to the audience's reactions, because it has a different meaning now, because there's some lines in it about Prime Minister and being on the last legs, and actually that was happening and has already happened now, so it's like it means different things.
I thought it was the biggest change was actually when we were doing the show and then the new Prime Minister had been selected, and all of a sudden as I was talking about the Prime Minister as a he, I was like, oh, it's not true anymore. It's not true because it's not a he anymore, because it's a she. And I was like, oh, wait, it doesn't need to be real. It doesn't need to be, it's just written. But I definitely got the like, oh, it's been real this whole time until now. And we've had to do the crossover of the real life events, which means we need to take the audience on that crossover as well.
The best writing touches on where you've got a really dark moment, but then the writer also makes you laugh. And I think the moments of the piece also juggle constantly with what reaction you're having at the time. And I actually think when it comes to the comedy of it, playing it straighter, the darker the moment is, the more comedic it will be. Well, if we were trying to play it as clowns in that moment, you'd lose it in a dark moment. But I think Anna's Word of Delicious is how I find like writing that really gets you, because you realise the truth in it.
Well, once I get thrown off the train, once I nearly die, but when I come back on top of the train, I've got a moment with Phoebe Bernays where I basically find out I've always been on the back foot, that I was never going to win, the story was never going to go out, and she offers me a job that's then with their party and would be totally life-changing. But I think in that moment, that's Tobi's key moment, because it's where she gets tested most, because she's talking the talk the whole time, and then in the end she says she's interested in this job that she's totally against, and against the party and against these people, and literally going to work under her attempted murderer. Do you know what I mean? I think that's the point, and probably it's quite hard because in a farce, obviously there's really, really serious moments, and especially in this play. And I think that one for me is where the farce goes out the window, where I'm no longer playing the game, I'm no longer in a comedy, and I'm just telling my Tobi's truth, Tobi's character's truth.
That was my favourite moment when I read the play, and I think it's just because you realise for all of humanity that even in that situation you probably do the same, because you cannot win with the powers. And then I think it's really clever of Uma to then put the footage in at the end, because when all is lost, actually as a community there is power. So yeah, that was when I read it. That was my absolute favourite moment. So the key moments for Asiya Raya would start off with a baby washing up on the coast of Dover, because that's the first time that her need to be Prime Minister is rocked, and the reality of that actually happening might not. So she's really clutching on to the possibility of that, and the more events that happen, the likelihood is like getting less and less. And Asia's really trying to hold on tight, and her special advisor Phoebe as well. They are literally like grasping for it, and it's slipping through their fingers of all possibility. So the next moment that's really quite big for Asiya is when she connects with the baby. So she has a little bit of the baby bites her nipple off, but in a weird way, as destructive as that might seem, actually brings out the humanity in Asiya, maybe through a weird dream, but she actually connects to the baby and that child and doesn't see it as not a human and just a refugee. She actually sees it as a baby and hers, and she really gets protective, like looking into its eyes, like its big, beautiful eyes we keep mentioning, and it's like suddenly she realises that human is like she needs to protect it. However, running through all of those lines that's happening at the time is still her need to be Prime Minister. That is huge in her life. And then you've got this baby that would mean that couldn't happen. Her and a special advisor constantly covering up things that might unveil it. But at the end, they make a decision to throw the baby out the window because that's her only chance of being Prime Minister. And in that moment, she decides that actually this life is worth anything. She shuts down her humanity at that point to be Prime Minister. So in a weird way with politicians as well, there's so many things they'll say where you're like, I don't know if that's really you or if that's just because you need to be where you are and you're spouting that for the people to like you or to get a reaction. I know Priti Patel was talking about the death penalty, and I was like, did you do that just to elevate yourself to public consciousness that you're there and like people see you and or do you really believe that? It's crazy. And then the next moment I think which is quite key is after Phoebe gets rid of Toby as well, that completes any problem they had, and all of a sudden everything she's dreamed of is possible. And we kind of leave on a really bleak note of she giving this kind of complete ruse to the public of like presenting herself as the perfect politician when we've seen all of what's happened.
Yeah, it's quite hard because it's such a small cast, there's only 4 of us, so you get time with everyone. So like, I get time with every single person because I think me and your relationship is really, really important to me because I need to get the story, I need to talk to you. To be honest, can't really be bothered with Phoebe Bernays. I'm like, just let me speak to the Home Secretary, please.
And I need you also because I need you to write good things about me, so it's this weird...
So we've got a like, kind of understanding, yeah, we don't really like each other, but then because Phoebe Bernays keeps coming in, it creates this relationship with Phoebe that I'm not wanting, really. So that becomes strong. Your mum coming in, like as Manjula Auntie, Tobi finds a bit of humanity in Manjula Auntie, who obviously, of course, underneath is Haben Hailey. But when she starts talking about asylum policies and stuff like that, I'm like, oh, we agree on that. So that creates a strong connection. But I think I'm probably, because I'm not in on the game that you 3 are in on, I'm probably quite separate. So I've got a bit of an equal relationship with everyone, I'd say, but I'm the outsider, I think, in terms of, and Momo I don't really care about, to be honest, couldn't care less because it's just your kid. And I'm like, great story. Like that's all I know.
Yeah, the same, because it's such a small cast. Actually, every character, there's a relationship, and Asia's needing them as well. Like Phoebe and her like completely coexist because they both like need each other. Like Asia relies on her so much to tell her what to do, what she's thinking. She just completely manages Asia. Asia is almost like a puppet to Phoebe, but also Phoebe needs Asia to be the front face of that. I also think they've got like we did the whole backstories, whether it's written or not, but like there's a real history between them, but at the same time it's always been work related. So I think they would both sell each other out and put each other under the bus if necessary. I'm sure they're as cold to be able to do that.
Working relationship.
It's working, but throughout the whole show they I'm going to say have each other's back, which is a terrible word to say for all the horrible things they do, but they really are solving each other's problems, even though Phoebe is really doing it in the absolute sense of it, where every issue she's, as is her absolute puppet. So Phoebe's really competent throughout the whole piece of solving the issue and like getting the reality of being Prime Minister closer and closer. Again, with the journalist as a politician, journalists are so annoying to me, but at the same time I need to present myself, or Asiya needs to present herself in a way that you're going to write in a positive light for the public. And then Habiba's character Harbin, I never meet her as Harbin until the end and have no idea about Harbin being a refugee. But just as my mother, as much as I'm hating how loud and wrong the costume is and how she's presenting herself as an Asian woman instead of being really British, which is what Asiya really wanted. Don't call yourself Manjula Auntie, no, let's take away this, we are British. And she's crazy. I still need her because I need the journalist to buy in to that. We haven't just that she is my mother and I'm a good person. So, and then Momo, like I need Momo because again, to start with, I actually need Momo to just be quiet and not make a fuss. But actually towards the end, I think I realized that there's no love for Asiya in her world. And yet this baby is the first thing that's giving her that reaction and like giving her those feelings. So for the characters, you do plot, I'm putting on a front, I'm not putting on a front, because the show moves so fast, your thought happens on the line, like, and the lines happen really speedy. So that's why, like, particularly as well with Tobi is like playing a game, but then having to believe the next line, but it's happening at such speed.
You don't have much time to go, oh, I'm going to show the audience that I'm actually going to do something sneaky here, because you need to keep on top of it. So you need to trust that they get it. Yeah. That they're getting what you're doing, and everyone.
It's quite athletic.
Anyway.
It's athletic acting in that sense because it's like, yeah, when you actually look at what like all the other actors, like Anna's doing and like Sophie and stuff, it's like every line you are in a different place.
Yeah.
And which has not happened to me in a show before. I've like had really slow reactions. Like you get to ease yourself into like where you're going. I think what's so interesting about the characters Uma's written as well is like, they're not likable. Well, most of them are not likable. Yeah. And I can be out in the audience and you know the audience hate you. And like from the beginning, and it's like, and they might turn in certain scenes, but their attitudes constantly flip as well. But you know, when you're like, some days the audience are like actually, you know, finding you funny, and then like other days it's like you're just bombing to them. And it's just...